So tell me about your book.
It's a memoir of a period in my life where Frank and I grew up. It starts from the 1950s when we left Baltimore, and it pretty much ends, the memoir ends when I left Frank when he was doing a show down in the village called Absolutely Free, when he and the Mothers were playing for a 6-month period at the Garrick Theater on Bleecker Street. In that time, from the 1950s till 1967, when we went our separate ways, there are some stories about growing up with Frank that have never been told before, but only could be told by me, because we lived through these times together. And sort of the purpose of the book is to give readers and fans a little bit of insight into who Frank was and how he got to be the person that he is. He was awfully intelligent, and he was very articulate. But he started that when he was 13 years old. He was that smart, that early in his life. So I try to explain how he actually got to that point.
And what is your age difference?
3 years. He's 3 years older. Was 3 years older.
Are you musical too?
Well, I started out, actually I bought the first guitar at a flea market, and I brought it home. This was in Lancaster, California, and it was an old F-hole guitar, and I sanded it down and tried to learn to play it, and I'm not musically inclined. At that time, Frank was playing drums in the band that he had. But he started playing guitar. He taught himself how to play guitar, and ultimately that's how he got into that. I'm not musically inclined. I like to listen to music, but I don't play it.
That was my next question. Do you listen to his records?
Oh, sure.
Do you know all the lyrics?
No,
I do?
Well, I understand that you do. My friend Rob Laney said that you do have a pretty good recall of the lyrics. I don't. My son, who lives in British Columbia, and he was a musician, he went to Bennington, knows not only the songs, but he can read Frank's music. I mean, he was a music major at Bennington. But I don't know the lyrics.
And Frank had some interesting names for his children. Moon Unit, Dweezil, Diva, and one more. Ahmet, right.
Ahmet was named after Ahmet Ertegun, because they were friends, I guess. And Moon Unit, Unit is, she was the first child in the family. So, number one, Moon Unit.
I see. And Dweezil?
Dweezil is a nickname. His birth certificate reads, there are several names of the band members at the time that he was named after. Euclid, several different names, but the nickname is Dweezil.
So funny. And then Diva. Why Diva?
And I'm not sure about that one. She was the youngest, and they just think she was a diva.
That's great. All right. So a lot of people are going to be most familiar with your brother in the 60s, like I'd say probably 67, 68 until maybe early 70s, would you say, was his biggest time?
I think that on his rise to recognition, that was pretty much the warm period, or hot period actually. But I think it was in 1971 he was doing a show in London when some guy came up on stage and pushed him off into the orchestra pit, and then he was out of business for about a year until he was able to recover, and then he had to walk with a brace. And so he sort of had to rebuild his identity and his recognition from 72 on. But then I think he became far more sophisticated in the music that he produced. He did 60 albums.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
and he died young, 53, right?
That's correct.
And he died of prostate cancer.
Yes, he did.
That must have been very tough on the family, you.
It was. It was difficult. I got the call the day after he passed away. And it stays with me.
So you were close growing up.
Yeah, I think what I try to say in the book is that we were best friends, and we were. I mean, there are stories and there are things that took place that only I can tell, but I took care of him and he took care of me, and we were very close. And then when it got to be a time for me to go my own way, it was hard doing that. It was hard leaving him because he wanted me to see if I'd like to be in the music business, and I just don't have that temperament. I ended up in even a worse business. I ended up in publishing. So, but it was tough leaving in 1967. But we still remained close until he died.
Was he sick for a while, so it wasn't a total shock that he died?
I think it came on suddenly when he realized that there was something dramatically wrong. He had been not in good health. He didn't have good dietary habits. He smoked a lot. He never did abuse any substance. Never did drugs.
Did he drink?
Occasionally, he did a couple of shows in Italy. One time he was in Sicily, and he bought cases of Barolo, which is a hearty red wine, which he liked. And occasionally he would have a glass of Bushmills. But he was not a drinker. He just didn't have time to not be aware of what he was doing.
Now, in that time, though, everybody was doing drugs. How did he find musicians to work with who weren't stoned?
Well, he wouldn't hire anybody who did drugs. He wouldn't have anything to do with anyone, regardless of how good they thought they were, if they smelled of drugs, or if they came to rehearsal stoned. He would fire them immediately. He did that many times. And he just said no patience with that. He was, as a lot of people are, a perfectionist in the way he ran his band. And so he didn't want anybody not helping him do what he wanted to do.
It's so funny because his first breakout album, Freak Out, it was so psychedelic. Everybody, I think, assumed he was like tripping on acid.
Yeah, I think that was I don't know if that was the intent, but that was the beginning of the kind of music that he was into. There's a form of jazz called free jazz. Are you familiar with that? It's when my son was at Bennington, he studied under a man named Bill Dixon. He was a trumpeter, and he was one of the proponents of this concept of free jazz, which to the untrained ear, like mine, it sounds like a lot of noise. But what Frank was doing to some people was noise as well, but it was his was far more sophisticated. I mean, he knew how to write music, and he understood what music could do, and so maybe he really intended for that first album to sort of throw people off, and then as the albums got better later on, people understood what he was doing.
They still sounded pretty trippy, a lot of them. They seemed like the same kind of headspace as like what you would call freaks, stoners.
Yeah, I think he used to refer to the hungry freaks, but I think he was referring to them in terms of their desire to do something different or hear different music. The music of the 50s, 60s, and even in the 70s is pretty sweet, pretty uninteresting, with 4 chords when you're up. But Frank did stuff that was far more innovative, far more sophisticated,